The entire baseball world is on hold right now as Carlos Correa tries to negotiate a resolution to his contract with the New York Mets. If you guys remember previously, Carlos Correa had agreed to a 13-year, $350 million deal this offseason to go to the San Francisco Giants, only to fail the physical. And before the San Francisco Giants knew what was happening, they had canceled their press conference, and Correa had already pivoted to the New York Mets. Conversation with Steve Cohen progressed quickly, and he agreed to anyway a 12-year, $315 million contract with the New York Mets. Now, of course, he also failed the physical there with the New York Mets, who classically, as a good organization, sent a private jet down there to pick him up, to get him to the physical, etc. But again, the same issue with the physical. Now, if you guys remember correctly, Carlos Correa had issues with his ankle anyway. In the minor leagues, had to put a plate or something into his ankle anyway. He took a injury anyway last season with the Minnesota Twins, sliding into second base, I believe, and felt some discomfort down there. Didn't miss any time during the season, but it seems like the plate shifted down in his ankle, and that seems to be where the issue is on the physical. Now, is this something that could be repaired and cost him a few games this season? Doubtful, since it's causing this level of issue with both the Giants and the Mets. I imagine this is more of a long-term injury that either A, he's going to have to play through, and maybe it doesn't crop up and cause him serious problems as he ages. He is still only, 28 years old, and this contract is going to take him through his age 40 season. Not exactly something you just want to say, I guess we'll deal with it down the road if you're the New York Mets. Money is still a limited commodity. Even for guys like Steve Cohen, you want to make sure you get the right guy, and it's not like they don't have a good third baseman already there in Eduardo Escobar. They just wanted to have another impact bat in that lineup, and that's exactly what Carlos Correa is, and especially when you consider that their payroll with Carlos Correa would be around $388 million with the tax penalties, around $500 million. Steve Cohen is absolutely doing everything he possibly can to try to deliver a World Series title to the New York Mets faithful. And Carlos Correa could be the piece that puts him over the top. So you can understand why Cohen wants to get it done. You can understand why Carlos Correa absolutely wants to get this done, because he's had the physical issues now with the Giants. He had the last offseason the issue as far as trying to get the long-term deal actually agreed to. And now he finally finds the spot where he wants to go with the New York Mets, only to have the physical crop up again. Now, of course, last year Carlos Correa played on an average annual value of $35 million for the Minnesota Twins after being unable to find a long-term deal to his liking. He was seeking a deal north of the Corey Seager contract of 10 years, $325 million from the Texas Rangers. The best deal that he got last offseason was from the Detroit Tigers, 10 years, $275 million. He didn't agree to that deal. They went ahead and went on with Javi Baez. That deal evaporated. All the other spots dried up as shortstops signed elsewhere, so he signed on with the Minnesota Twins for that 35 plus AAV. Now, of course, it was a 3-year deal worth $105 plus million, and with opt-outs after the first and second year. He wanted to get another bite at the apple this offseason. Completely understandable. You want to be able to lock up your future, especially considering he's 28 years old and will be able to get a higher AAV, you would think, than what he would get, say, when he's 31, 32, 33 years old. And so getting this type of a long-term deal done is very important to Carlos Correa. Now, we already have headlines coming from Carlos Correa's camp, Scott Boras' camp, who is was the agent anyway for Carlos Correa, that he's absolutely not willing to budge on the guaranteed money that he agreed to with the New York Mets. We'll see if he's able to budge on that or not. Since two teams have had issues with the physical, maybe that scares off other suitors. If he thinks he can get the same deal elsewhere, we might not see a resolution with the Mets. He could sign elsewhere, but even rival GMs still expect him to sign with the New York Mets. 55% is what they ultimately end up coining the number at, if you will. Now, as far as the Mets' perspective on things, you got to imagine they're going to want some type of a safety net to be able to protect themselves, since I'm guessing this contract is not going to be able to be insured because of the injury issue question marks around Carlos Correa. Now, money is money, and like I said, it's a limited commodity, even for guys like Steve Cohen. And so when you're unable to insure that contract, that means you're on the hook for every single dime of that deal that is guaranteed. Look at the Texas Rangers back when they made the trade for Ian Kinsler to the Detroit Tigers to take on the contract of Prince Fielder. Prince Fielder wasn't able to live out that contract. It was thought of at the time as a really big, risky move for the Rangers. There wasn't really injury concerns at the time, though. Then, of course, he wasn't able to finish out his career as he basically had to step away from the game because of injuries to his neck. And the Texas Rangers were on the hook for that entire contract. But wait, they had insurance, so at least it was a reduced cost for the ownership group there. That's what could be some of the issue anyway with the negotiations for Carlos Correa. Maybe we see some type of offset language that says, hey, if you miss one season's worth of games. Say if you miss 162 games or 200 games, we take this guarantee down to 250 million, cut off the final 2 years of the deal. Or as far as kind of to get Carlos Correa to agree to this type of a deal, maybe they give some incentives in there as well and say, hey, you agree to this deal and be able to lower the contract here to 250 if you're missing time, etc. If you're only able to play 6 seasons instead of 12, we'd still be on the hook for a significant portion of money, but it's not necessarily 315 million. So if you're able to play all 12 years, you're able to stay healthy and hit certain incentive markers, then maybe we could bump that deal up to what you originally agreed to with the San Francisco Giants. I'd imagine Steve Cohen would love nothing more than to have Carlos Correa play exactly what he did in the second half of the season with the Minnesota Twins, hitting 291, I believe, on the year after a slow start. Was still able to get that high of an average after that slow start with the Twins, and he is a dynamic force in that offense if the Mets are able to get him on board. But again, they're looking for an impact bat. He is certainly the best impact bat left on the free agent market. I mean, the next best shortstop right now in free agency is Elvis Andrus. Decent player, but not somebody you're counting on for 30 home runs, for elite second base or shortstop defense or third base defense as it is with the New York Mets. Other teams, of course, could still jump in here. Texas Rangers are still in search of a left fielder. They've been spending money left and right so far this offseason. They have roughly about $17-18 million left until they reach the luxury tax threshold anyway. That's something that's going to be of concern for them, I'd imagine, trying to stay underneath that number this year. And if they still want to spend money, they have a good free agent class next season to be able to go above that limit. But maybe they see an opportunity here and bring in Carlos Correa to play left field for them. There's other teams out there that need outfield help. The Mariners still need a left fielder, I believe. They're still in the hunt for an outfielder. There's guys on the free agent market like A.J. Pollock, David Peralta, Jurickson Profar, names like that. Again, not exactly the level of a guy like Carlos Correa, but again, if he's willing to move to third to be able to get that level of contract, maybe he's willing to move to left for a similar type of deal. But he's still a very good shortstop. I still think the deal ultimately gets done with the New York Mets, but it's something to keep your eyes peeled for as to what ultimately happens with Carlos Correa. Does he get the full guarantee, the 12 years, 315, and stick to his guns and say, no, I want this deal. You agreed to this deal. I'm signing this deal. I don't care what my medicals say. I was able to finish the season healthy. Should have no issue with my medicals right now because I was able to finish the season healthy. Now, sure, you may have some long-term issues, and that's where the Mets might push back and say, hey, we know you finished the season healthy, but how many more healthy seasons are you going to have? 5, 6 because of this issue we found in the physical? Are you going to have to miss the first year of your deal because you have to immediately have surgery to fix the issue that you have in your ankle? Or is this something you're going to have to live with, and maybe by season 8, 9, 10, you're no longer able to play every day, you have to put you at DH, or you literally can't run the bases anymore, so we literally have to go into retirement, and we have to get an injury settlement, things like that. Those are questions that the New York Mets are having to wrangle with. We'll see who ends up prevailing here. I'd imagine we're going to see some give on Carlos Correa's side, but if he's unwilling to relinquish as much as is needed for the Mets to be able to be comfortable signing that level of contract, maybe other teams will ultimately get involved. Let us know in the comment section what you think of Carlos Correa's deal with the New York Mets. Do you think they go with the same deal that they agreed to? Do you think it's going to be an incentive-laden deal and some detractors or opt-out options in there anyway to be able to offset injury issues? Do you think there's going to be language in there about games missed? Do you think there's going to be any other types of incentives in the deal that might make it a little bit more lucrative for him if he finishes as MVP, things like that are in most contracts? Maybe they incentivize those a little bit more than they otherwise would for normal contracts, and give them a little extra if that were to happen as a way to get what they want to protect themselves if they're unable to get the contract insured in case they do have to, in case he does miss the final 6 seasons of the deal. But we'll see how things resolve for Carlos Correa and the New York Mets. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button here at the Upside Sports Network. It really does help us out. Thank you guys so much for joining us over the past few months. It's been a lot of fun covering the offseason with you guys. And as always, hit that like button as well. And make sure to keep it here to the Upside for all the latest from the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL.